will call the Sewer Utility District Commission to order. Please call the roll. Well, actually, let the roll reflect that everyone who's here for the last meeting is here for this meeting. None of us left. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes from September 13th.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. First up, consent agenda. There are two items for exemption requests for 8813 West Mequon Road and 13120 Northwest Shoreland Drive. Would people like to take these up together or separately? Together's fine? Okay. Are there any questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those are both approved on the consent agenda. They'll be back before us at Common Council in a few minutes. Next up, we have our discussion items. I again would like to ask the Commission to consider suspension of the rules to take up item C ahead of item A and B. There's some late-breaking news that is pertinent and might important to get that out of the way before we take up the other items. So there's a motion and a second, hopefully. Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
The rules are suspended, and we'll take up item C. Administrator Jones, I think, is going to lead this one.
Yes, thank you. Do I call you mayor or
You can, Commissioner.
commissioner? Other members of the commission. On tonight's agenda, we had prepared a discussion regarding a number of options for potentially adjusting the sewer utility tax rate to address future capital needs. And on the screen before you tonight is just a quick listing of those options, which included a status quo rate remaining at 162, and then a number of other permutations which would require increases in successive years to address the long-term funding needs of the sewer utility. Additionally, one of the options, actually two rather, included some debt financing. Option 5 was debt being issued in 2024 for the Lift Station E project, and then option 6, which was distributed earlier this week, included a hybrid option for that Lift Station project. Staff is requesting to table this conversation tonight based on some information that we've come across over the last number of days. And as was discussed with the Appropriations Committee earlier this month, the city has been working under a scenario whereby we have less levy capacity to increase the city's tax rate over time. And we've been doing some investments on our fire department over the last number of years, which have resulted in some increases, as well as some borrowing and debt service, which have shrunk our levy capacity. And historically, as staff here can recall, the approach to completing the sewer levy tax sheet, which is filed with the state every year, has not included the sewer levy. But upon investigation out of the finance department and through our financial advisor, we have come to realize that we've been counting the sewer levy in our tax levy limit worksheet that's submitted to the state. And as we've just gone through an adjustment to the city's tax rate for the general fund budget, we are now at a point where we don't have a lot of additional capacity in order to consider the adjustments that we were going to be discussing tonight. Long story short, there's some further investigation that needs to occur, and we would request that this discussion be tabled pending the scheduling of a workshop meeting sometime early during the first quarter of 2023. We've been working with both our contracted advisors, the city attorney, as well as our financial advisor, Ellers, as well as some governmental agencies, including the Metropolitan Milwaukee Sewerage District, which is a big part of the sewer tax levy, and the Department of Revenue, which we reached out to earlier this week. These are all busy agencies. They are working on timelines. We're not able to get information necessarily as quickly as we'd like. And so while staff is optimistic and excited about getting projects done on the sewer capital plan, we also have to be realistic, making sure that the commission is in a position to be able to finance these improvements long term. So we're requesting some patience from the commission as we work through some of the details that need to be considered so that we remain in a fiscally sound position going forward into the next several years. With all that being said, this will likely result in a slight adjustment to the sewer utility tax rate that is associated with tonight's budget. And Finance Director Engroff is going to walk the council through a couple of options that we would recommend be considered tonight, pending the tabling of the tax rate discussion, as I outlined earlier.
Good evening. Yes, so what you have before you are two options. So one would be to, well, the first is we really need to comply with the levy limit restrictions, which would, as a result, bring that tax rate down from 1.62 to 1.59. So that's a reduction of 3 cents or about 2%. And then consequently, the capital funding needs to come down by 7% or $129,000. In order to, then we have another option where to kind of counteract those levy restrictions and try to keep that capital funding level to what has been built in the packet, we can pass through additional user rate fees in order to keep that capital funding level. So there would be about a 4% or a $3 increase to the sewer flat quarterly charge, about a 4% or 29-cent increase to the volumetric charge, and then of course the tax rate is remaining flat, and that would yield about an additional $139,000 of capital funding. And one point of clarification, that incremental 4% to the flat charge as well as the volumetric is incremental. So what's been built into the packet, that $75 flat charge, already is a 1% increase. So it was it's been $74 this year, so that would be about 5% increase year over year. And then what's built into the volumetric within the packet is a 6% increase. So that would be an incremental 4% to that 6% for a total of a 10% increase year over year on the volumetric.
So thank you, Director Engroff. We realize that this information is coming in a rather late-breaking fashion, and that's honestly not how we like to do things. We like to get information out to the council and the utility commission, in this instance, well in advance. We like to make sure that information is publicly available on the city's website so that anyone interested in a potential agenda topic has that information at hand. But again, just to reiterate, tonight's request is to table that discussion to a future date such that we can provide more detailed information regarding the long-term capital needs and how to finance such into the future. A couple of points I forgot to mention in my earlier remarks. One option for financing capital improvements that rests well outside the levy limits approved by the state back in 2005 is the issuance of debt. Now, honestly, we're in a rising interest rate environment, and so borrowing has gotten a little more expensive than it has been in years past. But if the sewer utility or the city, for that matter, were to issue debt, that's not something that we would need to contend with on a year-over-year basis relative to the levy limits imposed by the state. The other thing that we've discovered over the last several days is the fact that The enabling ordinance, which established the sewer utility back in 1996, mandated that the sewer utility be financed by both a tax levy as well as user fees. Subsequently, the state of Wisconsin approved tax levy limits in 2005, and there may, and I can't say this for certain because we need to do more investigation, there may have been a decision or a determination to include the sewer levy limit as part of the city's levy limit calculation, when in fact that didn't need to be the case once that law was approved in 2005. So we need to do some more investigation with our partners and with our city staff members to ensure that from inception, we've been calculating the levy limit per the statute's intent when it was established back in 2005. So there's no action required here tonight other than to consider the two options that Director Engroff laid out as it relates to the consideration of tonight's sewer utility budget, and we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions the commission might have with respect to the information we just presented.
I'm sure there's questions. I'm ahead of you all by at least 3 hours on this. So. Commissioner Meyer.
So, you're not looking for a decision or for this fiscal budget?
Not on the tax rate. No, we're going to be recommending a budget that either, as Director Engroff outlined, brings down the tax rate by 3 cents on the sewer utility and results in an increase in some of the user fees, or brings down the tax rate by 3 cents and we leave the user fees as proposed in the budget that was included in your packet.
So you're looking for a recommendation tonight on that?
Yes. And then the sewer utility budget will be formally approved, or the sewer levy and the budget will be formally approved at the council's next meeting on November 9th.
We could make one decision tonight and make a different decision at that meeting. But I think to keep things moving, we have to approve something tonight. Otherwise, we'll need another special meeting to approve it before the next meeting, because we have to recommend it by this body before taking it up at council. So it's unfortunate this is all coming in very last minute, but we're up against the wall.
And this relates to the long-term capital needs of the utility. The budget, as prepared and as presented and as recommended, fully funds the operations of the sewer utility for 2023. Nothing is coming out of the budget. We're just trying to look long-term at our financing needs to make sure that we can pay for the capital projects that are otherwise contained in the 5-year plan. So it's a longer-term discussion in many respects.
Maybe one more point of clarification. On November 9th is when the proposed ordinance for the mill rate will be before you. The budget also sets the user rates, which is what's otherwise contemplated here. And so based on your discussion tonight, we would update both the budget and the mill rate ordinance in accordance to your decision tonight. So whether it's to keep it the way that the budget is otherwise shown in the memo, or whether it's to change it as otherwise proposed, that would then be fully baked into that document that would be before you on the 9th, as well as the mill rate of the 1.59.
Commissioner Parrish.
So either way, it's going to be around $1.60 as far as the tax rate, and then does that mean we're going to be forced to do debt? That's our only way of financing the lift station. Isn't that what all that means?
No, so the second proposal would transfer the capital funding to the user rate, off the levy into the user rate. So the capital funding with the increased user rate would be equitable to what was originally proposed, but with the funding coming through the levy.
I think
We didn't increase user rates. There's still capital funding. It's just not capital funding at the level that was otherwise originally recommended.
But we're not being given the chance. We can no longer use the rate as a way to partially pay for the lift station. We're just gonna
Well,
use more capital.
our historical practice has been to cover the operational cost of the utility on the user fee and the capital charges on the tax levy. Because that's how MMSD does it. We structured it pretty much the same. You know, the one is based off of usage, the other is based off of assessed value of the structure being served. So it's been a nice, clean separation for a good long time. If we were to consider the option there, we'd be you're eroding the separation of church and state between operational and maintenance.
To maybe further erode the issue or explain it, I'm not sure which is the debt financing has typically been what's included in the mill rate or the levy. So depending on what would have been the commission's decision or direction on whether to fund the improvements through debt service or through the mill rate, the same could apply to the difference between user rates and debt servicing, but that debt has traditionally otherwise been funded by that mill rate.
So it's a couple cents off the tax roll and the capital funding goes down, or we choose to keep the sum total of the user charges in the levy portion even. It just shifts that cost to the user fee side of the equation. That's basically the choice we have to make. And we're gonna make that now, or we're gonna make it in item 5.
That's really up to the utility commission. Tonight, we're on a discussion item right now on the agenda, so that could be brought up, added in as an amendment during the discussion regarding the budget.
Let's get the discussion portion over now. I apologize, this is all hitting you very, very late. Like I said, I'm only hours ahead of you. This was a lunch meeting and a little get together after normal working hours before this meeting. How do the commissioners feel about both the options? One is they're both sort of punting. There's just one, the ball's going to go a little farther down the field. Understand no one's had time to absorb it, and we're
Well, I would
being asked to consider it quickly.
recommend to go with the option to raise the quarterly rate by the $3 and the 0.29 of the ball mill.
Can you say that again? Closer to the microphone?
Excuse me?
Can you say that again? Closer to the microphone?
Said I'll make a motion to raise the quarterly rate by the $3 and the volume rate by the amount.
I'll second that. It's essentially treading water fiscally. It's just a little more comes from user rates as opposed to the levy. It's probably a good position to take given where we're at. We can always undo it next year when we learn more from Department of Revenue and MMSD and digging back through our financial accounting history. It would at least keep funding flat and not further put us behind on capital charges. Regarding the lift station, I think we're more likely to plan that next year, maybe expend the funds the year after, perhaps.
Part of that is dependent on some of the next agenda items.
Sure.
That we otherwise have, but yes.
So we've got a little bit of time to sort this out, but also realize it's not optimal to be asking you to make late-breaking decisions under duress. Okay, we've got some level of support for.
Well, there's a motion, so.
Well, we're just
Yeah.
discussing it now. We can make the amendment to the budget in a little bit. I think we can move on. We'll see how the voting goes when we take up the budget in item 5. Unless there's any more questions, let's get them out of the way now. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on, and if we need more clarity in a couple minutes, we can always get that then. So let's move on to lift station.
Well, then you want me to withdraw my motion because normally it's an actionable item.
Well, we're in discussion items now. We'll get to the resolutions in a second. I think that's.
Well, there is a motion that would I guess, make a recommendation as it relates to the 5th. So you'd either vote on that, or the maker could withdraw the motion and just bring it back up under 5A.
Well, we can vote on, we can vote on it, it's just a discussion item, but let's, we have a motion and a second to take what would have been 3 cents of levy and convert it to equivalent dollar value in user charges.
Be second if there wasn't a second.
There was a motion and a second. Let's call the roll on that.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin.
Aye. It's recommended for inclusion in the budget resolution we're about to take up. On to lift station E, replacement site selection and preliminary cost estimate. Kevin, you
Yeah,
gonna take this one?
yeah, I'll take this one.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, commissioners. Good evening. So just a brief history of this item. Following a condition assessment that began for Lift Station E in 2020, a number of electrical safety improvements were implemented for the site that's in the floodplain. In addition, the facility, it was built in 1965, and that assessment identified that a replacement station is required to address the capacity and allow for future growth. So site selection were presented in October 2021 that identified requirements such as space and need for construction to replace the existing facility that accommodates future operation and maintenance. So then in December of 2021 through 2022, staff held a series of public information meetings that was following authorization from the Sewer Utility District Commission to enter into negotiations for an easement or site acquisition. And there was a series of outreach letters and site visits, and in addition, discussions occurred for a partial site acquisition. However, that ended where an appraisal that was scheduled was ultimately canceled. So as a result, our best viable option for Lift Station E is in the public right-of-way. And given the expense of this replacement project, it's $4.5 million to over $6 million. With that budget implication on the sewer utility budget, staff seeking guidance from the Sewer Utility District Commission on moving forward with the design. So I apologize about the microphone coming in and out. But our anticipated next steps would be issuing a request for proposal from qualified and experienced consultants to work on the project. Staff would bring that design contract back to the Sewer Utility District Commission for award. And that scope is anticipated to include a series of public information meetings that would allow resident input, as the best viable option is currently in the public right-of-way where a multi-use path currently exists. So it's important to have that public information meeting as part of the process. So if you're not familiar with the details of the area, it was in the packet under Exhibit A near Ranch and Oriole Lane. Sorry. So are there any questions about moving forward with the site selection, or should I wait till we get the map up?
I'll get the map up. I just want to note in case there's concern, given obviously the capital discussion that we just had, that the design with consensus for the location The design can be completed pending the conclusion of the financing discussion. We wouldn't ultimately issue the design for actual construction until we have conclusion on the financing option. We do otherwise have sufficient existing capital funding for the design. So we're not trying to obligate the commission in the site selection to any decisions as it relates to the ultimate terms for financing the construction.
Commissioner Schneider.
So I remember you speaking with us a few months back, maybe more than a few months, and it was challenging to find a site that was appropriate in terms of engineering and in terms of accessibility to the land. So, I mean, we don't have other options. I mean, it just seemed like this site being in the right of way and accessible would be the best one. And I did look at the map. It's relatively close to the old station, so I think it's good in that way. And so I'd be in favor of moving forward. This is a much needed lift station. I think we could agree. So I'd be in favor of moving forward with the design, knowing that the funding of it is a lot of money and maybe a challenge.
I have one question. Will the new lift station essentially be where the path is now? Is there any way to save that connection to the next neighborhood?
Ultimately, the intent would be to maintain the connection. It would likely not be in the exact location where it is now.
Okay. So our intent would be to save that pedestrian connection. It just can reconfigure it a little bit. Okay.
Yes, it's a 60-foot right-of-way, and the
Footpath.
site selection criteria that we established, if the building is approximately 25 feet wide. We don't have final design by any means. We don't even have preliminary design. But if the building's 25 feet wide, that still leaves room for vehicle access on one side and the pedestrian path on the other side of the structure.
And obviously, when we say vehicular access, we mean for our vehicles for maintenance, not that the
Sewer vehicles, not cars. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good clarification to make from Colin. I understood you. Commissioner Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. Just curious, what's the delta in the potential cost between 4.8 and 6.2 million? What are you thinking we might encounter that could be a $1.4 million swing?
That estimate was from the 2020 condition assessment is where that estimate was based on. So that's not adjusted for inflation.
and also not adjusted for location. It was just based on the concept of a new lift station. So part of the range is to be able to make all the appropriate connections.
So we're saving some money on not acquiring a site or an easement. So that's a major plus for this option. So definitely would like to proceed.
I think we just need to signal you to proceed. We have the money to do the design part, and we should get that rolling, because we're going to have to do this eventually. Certainly would entertain any more questions, but it seems like there's general support for this. See how heads nodding yes, thumbs up. Okay. Any more questions? If not, we can go on to a companion item for the Lift Station E backup pumping system.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Commissioner Nurbin. Back in spring, the Sewer Utility District Commission approved a consultant contract for the design of a backup pumping system. This backup pumping system at Lift Station E contemplated diesel or natural gas power supply in the event of electrical power outages. And that this project was advertised for bid, and those were consistent with the engineer's estimates. However, in consideration of the Lift Station E site selection and moving forward with that design process over a 24 to 30 month period, staff had budgetary questions and concerns regarding the nearly $600,000 expense as the bids came in, and are presenting this item to the commissioners in the context of this overall budget, looking for direction as on whether to award the contract for the automatic pumping system or pursue other options if the Sewer Utility District Commission would reject the bid. One thing to note is that once the new lift station is constructed, that backup pumping system would be the preferred type would have been a diesel as opposed to the hard pipe natural gas, and that diesel pump would be allowed to be portable and used at other sites if needed. And there's also an option to look at a resale of that pump if it were to be acquired. So given the site selection that's been not formally approved, but there's been consensus on moving forward with the design. If that were not, if we did not get a consensus, I'd feel strongly about having a long-term backup pumping system. But if we are moving forward with that design process, given historically we have not had both power feeds fail, staff can pursue other options.
And of course, I'm sorry if I
No,
may.
that's fine.
Of course, this is one of those items that became further complicated by the justly breaking levy discussion. And knowing that we may be under some additional capital funding constraints beyond what we anticipated when the package was otherwise put together, we'd have concerns about spending $600,000 on the backup system when really the ultimate cure is a new lift station to otherwise be constructed.
So that was just my clarification, that this would only really be needed for the period of time before this new lift station is constructed.
Correct. And to Kevin's point, it's not that there couldn't potentially be opportunities for reuse, but this specific location and this specific request was really due to the condition assessment and as a stopgap if we weren't ultimately able to replace that lift station in a reasonable time frame.
So the issue would really only arise if there was a fairly widespread power outage such that both of our electrically pumped systems would fail.
Yes, or a combination of a storm and an accident, or something like that knocked both out at the same time. We both, due to the amount of time it would take for staff to get there and the size of the portable pumps that we ultimately have, we wouldn't be able to keep up with the flows in the station, and there would be an overflow.
They're fed by two different substations. It's just not two different electrical feeds off the same substation.
Correct. So again, it's the outage and an accident, or something like that would ultimately be.
That's a fairly significant amount of redundancy, I guess. Not that having a backup to that isn't prudent, but it seems like an acceptable risk in the fiscal climate we're in.
And perhaps more than anything, we just wanted to advise everyone else of the risk. It's one thing for staff to make the decision in a vacuum, and another for you all to be aware of what the consequences are. So just trying to make sure that, first of all, everyone knows that the ultimate cure is a new lift station. So we're all trying to work ultimately towards that. And that, to Kevin's point, we can certainly look at other options in the interim that are at a scale less than $600,000.
Thank you.
So to summarize, we've received direction here tonight from the commission to proceed with design on lift station E. We need to figure out how we're going to finance that improvement, as well as other capital needs identified in the sewer utility budget, which we'll be getting to in a moment. And more near term, as was indicated in the memo from Deputy Director Driscoll, we have received 2 bids for this backup power system, which, pending the commission's concurrence here tonight, will be brought forward on November 9th for rejection, formal rejection by the council.
Commissioner Parrish?
Thank you, Mayor. I would have asked, would going out to bid again yield any better results? Probably not much better. And then my other question, Actually, my main question is, has the system ever failed before? Has this happened before?
Both speeds have failed, but not simultaneously.
So this is a really unique situation, and you're just kind of passing or sharing the risk in this happening with Common Council or utilities.
Yes, and I'm not sure how well all of you sleep when there's large
No,
rain
I get
events,
it.
but
So you're sharing the
Yep.
knowledge of what could happen, and I guess if you're implying that there were other lot less costly alternatives, I think those should probably have been explored, and I would like to hear more.
yes. And they're not as reliable, but again, given the time frame, we'll look at those as more
Less
viable.
costly and reusable in other areas.
Right, the system that's designed, that was authorized, it's automatic system. So there isn't the time gap for mobilizing to the site.
Thank you.
That was gonna be my same question with the having more of a mobile type of.
Well, we have
Unit.
mobile units, they're just, the capacity is much smaller, and so given the size of this lift station, it wouldn't be able to keep up, so.
I mean, there's mobile units that less price than this that can take care of whole neighborhoods. So with that, and I know there's a lag time in between.
Yes, that's
That
what's
may be
otherwise
that
addressed.
may be the biggest issue with the lag time inside there, but.
Can you also show the service area map? That's in.
Yeah, this one happens to collect flow
Yeah,
from
from
many
other
other
lift
lift
stations.
stations at a central point, so it becomes it all adds up and
So,
comes
but the
downstream.
question would be then is that, so the new power station or the new backup system would be down and enclosed in the existing one? Or would it be outside of that anyways?
It'd be outside on a pedestal above the floodplain.
So what would be the difference then of having one there that would be a portable one that would be stationed there as soon as that kicked off?
The preference is always to have them on site because then they don't require anyone to get there. And so, but unfortunately, some of our stations are constrained in terms of site limitations where we can't otherwise locate one on site. But the new one would otherwise have one sited on site.
Well, what's the general consensus? Recommend this get rejected next month? All in favor of rejection next month, please say aye. Aye. Okay, I think you've got direction.
Thank you.
But we'll entertain other slightly less reliable but cheaper alternatives. That brings us to resolutions. Resolution 3991, the resolution adopting a fiscal year 2023 sanitary sewer utility budget and establishing a 2023 sanitary user fee schedule. Discussed this a little bit earlier. With regard to the levy and fee structure, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Just to clarify, that would include the item we took a vote on earlier to reduce the levy by 3 cents and shift the equivalent amount of dollars to user charges as presented earlier.
Correct.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish, Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
All right.
The resolution is passed on to the council. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.